There's a used car lot about 20 minutes from where I'm standing, and last week it had two SUVs parked nose to nose. Same year. Almost identical mileage. Both clean, both serviced, both with the paperwork to prove it. One was priced $6,000 higher than the other. And here's the thing that should stop you cold. The cheaper one was the better machine. Better engine. Better transmission. Better bones. I put a scan tool on both of them because that's what I do, and the expensive one had more stored codes than the cheap one had problems. So why the $6,000 gap? Simple. One of them had a badge everybody wants, and the other had a badge everybody forgot. That's it. That's the whole difference. Not engineering. Memory. The used market doesn't price vehicles on how they're built. It prices them on what people remember hearing about them 15 years ago and on what everybody else is standing in line for. And right now, in 2026, that line is longer and dumber than I've ever seen it. Everybody wants the same 3 or 4 SUVs, they're bidding them into the stratosphere, and meanwhile there are genuinely excellent machines sitting on lots with prices that make no mechanical sense. I've had my hands inside most of what I'm about to show you. Torn them down, put them back together, watched what fails and what doesn't at 150,000 miles. Today I'm giving you 9 of them. 9 SUVs that are cheap because of ignorance, not because of failure. And one of them wears a Lexus badge, and the reason it's cheap should make you a little angry. Stay for that one because it's the best deal on this entire list. Before we get to number 1, you need to understand why this works because it's not a trick. Used prices are set by demand, and demand is set by perception, and perception runs about a decade behind reality. Everybody crowds around the RAV4 and the CR-V because their neighbor had one and it never broke, and that's fair. Those are good vehicles. But that crowd is paying what I call the badge tax. They're paying a premium for the reassurance, not for the metal. And on the other side of the lot, there are vehicles built with the same engineering discipline, sometimes with literally the same parts underneath, sitting there discounted because of a reputation the company earned in 1995 and fixed in 2010. Or because the styling was weird, or because the model got canceled and everybody assumed canceled means bad. And if you can learn to see past the story and look at the actual iron, other people's ignorance becomes your down payment. Let's go. Number 1. The Toyota Venza. The original one, 2009 through 2015, not the hybrid they brought back later. That's a different animal entirely. Here's what the first Venza actually is, and I want you to hear this clearly. It's a Toyota Camry. It's a Camry wagon on stilts, built in the same Georgetown, Kentucky plant, and if you order the good one, you get the 3.5-liter V6, the 2GR-FE, which is one of the finest engines Toyota ever put in anything. 268 horsepower, timing chain, no turbo, no gimmicks, and it will run past 300,000 miles with oil changes and basic decency. That exact engine in a Camry or a Lexus commands a premium. In the Venza, it's discounted, because the Venza sold poorly, got canceled in 2015, and slid straight out of everybody's memory. It wasn't quite an SUV, wasn't quite a wagon, and Americans didn't know what shelf to put it on. So today, you'll find clean V6 examples floating around $10,000 to $13,000, sometimes less, while people pay more than that for a RAV4 of the same vintage with a smaller engine and a harder life. And here's why that engine lasts. In plain terms, no turbocharger means no glowing hot bearing spinning at 200,000 RPM waiting for one lazy oil change to kill it. A timing chain instead of a belt means one less scheduled surgery. Port injection on the intake side means the valves stay washed clean instead of caking up with carbon the way a lot of direct injection-only engines do. They call all that naturally aspirated port-injected architecture. Forget the words. It just means fewer ways to die. Things to check. It's a Toyota of that era, so look at the usual stuff. Water pump seepage, strut wear, the condition of the rear hatch struts, and make sure the oil was actually changed on schedule, because even a 2GR can be murdered by neglect, it just takes longer. You can have it with all-wheel drive too, and the system is simple and trouble-free. That's about it. This is Camry reliability wearing a costume nobody recognized, and the market's confusion is your discount. Remember the theme. Same metal, forgotten story. Number 2. The Ford Flex. Yeah, the box. The one that looks like a giant refrigerator on wheels. The one people either loved or laughed at, and mostly laughed at, which is exactly why it's on this list. Ford built the Flex from 2009 to 2019 up in Oakville, Ontario, on a platform whose bones trace back to Volvo, from the years Ford owned Volvo and quietly borrowed their homework. That means it drives lower, flatter, and more car-like than almost any three-row SUV of its day, because underneath it basically is a big car. The engine to want is the naturally aspirated 3.5-liter V6, the Cyclone. Simple, port, and eventually dual injection, well proven. There was a twin-turbo EcoBoost version with 365 horsepower, and it's a riot, but for a keeper I'd take the plain one. Fewer things to go wrong. Now, the honest caveat, because I promised you I'd always give it to you. On these V6, the water pump lives inside the engine, driven by the timing chain, and if it fails and you ignore it, coolant can end up where coolant should never be. It's a known job. Budget for it preemptively around 150,000 miles, and it's a non-event. While you're at it, if it's an all-wheel drive one, have the power transfer unit fluid changed, the little gearbox that splits power to the rear, because Ford never gave it a service interval and it deserves one anyway. Do that, and you've got a three-row hauler with acres of flat floor, real headroom in the third row, a cabin you can hose the crumbs out of, and prices that start under 10 grand because the styling scared the neighbors. And the box shape everybody mocked? Boxes are honest. A box gives you the most interior for the least exterior, which is the entire point of the vehicle. The machine was never the problem. The shape of the story was. Number 3. The Kia Sorento, 2016 to 2020, and listen carefully, because with this one, the trim you pick is everything. Kia in that era built two very different stories under one hood opening. The four-cylinder engines from those years, the 2.4 and the 2.0 turbo, are the ones tied up in all the engine recalls you've heard about, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Some of them ate themselves. Skip them, and understand why, because the why is the useful part. Those four-cylinder engines had a manufacturing problem, debris left in the crankshaft oil passages from the machining process, which could starve the rod bearings of oil. And a rod bearing running dry doesn't warn you politely, it knocks for a week and then puts a leg out of bed. That's a factory sin, not a design sin, but either way it's their problem and you don't have to make it yours. What you want is the 3.3-liter V6, the Lambda engine, a completely different engine family from a different line, 290 horsepower through a conventional 6-speed automatic. A real torque converter automatic. No dual-clutch nonsense, no CVT. That V6 and that gearbox are genuinely stout, and anybody who's actually wrenched on Korean stuff from the last decade will tell you the same thing. The V6 are the good ones. Here's why the whole vehicle is cheap. People still carry a picture of Kia from the 90s, when the cars were, let's be honest, disposable. That company doesn't exist anymore. The modern ones are engineered properly, and the 10-year powertrain warranty they hung on them tells you the factory knew it. But the memory lingers, so the price stays down. You'll find a clean V6 Sorento, 3 rows, loaded, in the low to mid-teens, thousands under the equivalent Highlander. Same job, same durability in V6 form, smaller number on the windshield. That's the badge tax again, working in your favor this time. Number 4. The Nissan Murano. And I can hear some of you groaning already, so let me get out in front of it. Yes, it has a CVT. Yes, we're going to talk about it like adults. Start with what's underneath. The VQ35, Nissan's 3.5-liter V6, an engine so good it spent over a decade on best engine lists, an engine that will outlast the body around it. Smooth, strong, 260 horsepower, and about as proven as a modern engine gets. The 2015 to 2019 Murano wraps that engine in one of the most comfortable quiet cabins in the class, and because everybody on the internet says Nissan CVT and runs away screaming, prices sit in the 12 to 16 range for vehicles that were nearly 50 grand new. Now the truth about the transmission, straight, no drama. First, what a CVT actually is, because half the fear comes from the mystery. Instead of fixed gears, you've got a steel belt running between two cone-shaped pulleys that squeeze together and spread apart to change ratio. They call it a continuously variable transmission. Forget the name. It's a belt between two cones, and everything depends on that belt gripping those cones. And the grip depends entirely on the condition of the fluid. Old worn-out fluid means slip. Slip means heat. Heat means metal in the pan, and metal in the pan means a tow truck. So the CVT is the weak link? Yes, but it's not a time bomb. It's a maintenance item people refuse to maintain. Nissan called the fluid lifetime, and lifetime in marketing language means the lifetime of the warranty, not the lifetime of the car. Change that fluid every 30,000 miles, don't tow heavy, don't drive it like you stole it, and these regularly go 200,000. Buy one with fluid records, or buy one cheap enough that a future transmission job still leaves you ahead, because rebuilt units are common and the rest of the vehicle is excellent. Number 5. The Buick Envision, 2016 to 2020, and this one comes with a story that killed its resale before it ever had a chance. This was the first vehicle a major American automaker built in China and sold here, out of GM's plant in Yantai, and the moment people heard that, a whole slice of the market crossed it off forever without ever opening the hood. Here's what those people missed. The plant that built it is one of GM's newer, better-equipped facilities, and the vehicle that came out of it kept showing up near the top of the dependability surveys, right alongside the badges everybody worships. Buick has quietly been one of the most reliable names in those rankings for years now, and the old mechanics figured out why a long time ago. Buick buyers are older, they drive gently, they service on schedule, and the company engineers for that customer. Boring, in the best possible sense. The one to get is the 2.5-liter naturally aspirated 4 with the 6-speed automatic. There's a 2.0 turbo too, and it's fine, but the 2.5 is the one built with nothing to prove and nothing to fail. No turbo plumbing, no intercooler, no boost-related stress on the internals, just an engine loafing along at a fraction of its capability, which is exactly the recipe for a long life. Quiet, tight, comfortable, and nobody under 60 ever considered it. So you get the grandpa discount stacked on top of the made in China discount, 2 stories pushing down the price of one perfectly good machine, and clean ones sit in the mid-teens with low miles, because grandpa really did only drive it to the pharmacy. 2 prejudices, 1 bargain. The theme again. Number 6. The Dodge Durango, and this is the muscle car guy pick on the list, but the reasoning is pure accountant. From 2011 on, the Durango isn't some crude truck, it's built on the same platform as the Jeep Grand Cherokee, engineered back when Chrysler and Mercedes were sharing homework, rear drive based, properly planted. The engine you want is the 3.6-liter Pentastar V6. Chrysler has built millions of these things. They're in everything from minivans to pickups, and the fleet mileage on that engine family is astronomical, which means every weakness is known, documented, and cheap to fix. Early ones had a cylinder head hiccup Chrysler sorted. From 2014, you also get the 8-speed automatic built on the ZF design, one of the best gearboxes of the era, and that combination will tow over 6,000 pounds while returning respectable mileage. So why is a Durango thousands cheaper than the equivalent Explorer or Highlander? The Dodge badge. People assume Dodge means it'll strand you, and they assume the whole lineup drinks like the Hellcat versions they see on the internet. Neither is true of the V6. What's true is that fleet buyers and rental companies bought them by the boatload, which flooded the used market and crushed the prices. Depreciation did the hard work. You just show up and collect, and that fleet volume pays you a second time at the parts counter. When an engine family has been built by the millions, every water pump, every sensor, every mount exists in 6 aftermarket flavors at real-world prices, and every independent shop in the country has done the job before. Compare that to some low-volume European crossover where the same repair means a dealer, a special tool, and a second mortgage. Common is cheap, and cheap to fix matters more over 10 years than cheap to buy. Big, comfortable, 3 rows, real towing, mid to high teens. Let the badge snobs pay extra somewhere else. Number 7. The Mazda CX-9, 2nd generation, 2016 onward, and this one is on the list for the strangest reason of all. It's ignored because Mazda doesn't have a reputation problem. It doesn't have much of a reputation at all. Toyota people buy Toyotas, Honda people buy Hondas, and Mazda just quietly builds some of the best engineered vehicles on the market while selling a tenth as many. The CX-9 sold so modestly that most buyers forget it exists, and low demand means soft prices. What you're getting is a 3-row SUV with the nicest interior in its class by a mile, genuinely premium, and Mazda's 2.5-liter Turbo 4. That engine is a clever piece of work. 250 horsepower on premium fuel, 227 on regular, with 310 pound-feet of torque arriving down low where you actually drive. Mazda tuned that turbo for grunt off the line instead of a big horsepower number for the brochure, so around town it moves like a V6 while sipping like a 4, and that's the difference between engineers designing for the driver and marketers designing for the ad. You might say a Turbo 4 in a 3-row is asking for trouble. Fair instinct, wrong here, because Mazda ran the boost conservative and the internal strong, and these have been racking up miles quietly for a decade now. Honest caveat, as always. The earliest ones, 2016 and 2017, had a cylinder head issue that could weep coolant, and Mazda stood behind it with an extended warranty, which tells you they took it seriously. My advice keeps it simple. Buy 2018 or newer, and the worry evaporates. Do that, and you're getting near luxury build quality. Number 8. The Acura MDX, and here the whole game is picking the right 2 years, 2014 and 2015. Let me explain why those two specifically, because this is the kind of detail that separates a good buy from a headache. Under the hood is Honda's 3.5-liter V6, the J35, single overhead cam VTEC, one of the great V6 engine families of the modern era. The same basic architecture that's been hauling pilots and Odysseys past 250,000 miles for decades. Honda kept its single overhead cam when everyone else went dual, because simple was working, and that tells you something about the engineers who built it. They weren't chasing a spec sheet, they were chasing durability, and they caught it. In 2014 and 2015, that engine is bolted to a conventional 6-speed automatic. Proven, smooth, durable. In 2016, Acura switched to a 9-speed that, I'll be polite, spent its early years confused about what gear it wanted, and those model years carry the complaints to prove it. So you buy the 6-speed years and sidestep the whole mess. One more piece of honesty. These V6 have cylinder deactivation, the system that shuts down cylinders to save fuel, and over time, it can encourage oil consumption and grumble through the engine mounts. The fix is known. Half the owners run a little plug-in gadget that keeps all 6 cylinders awake, problem solved for the price of a dinner. Do those 2 things, right years, handle the deactivation, and you've got a genuine luxury 3-row with Honda internals for 14 to 18 grand. And number 9, the one I told you to stay for. The Lexus RX 350, 2010 through 2015, and specifically the ones everybody scrolls past, the high-mileage examples. Here's the setup. The RX of that generation runs the 2GRFE, the same 3.5 V6 from the Venza, back at number 1, wearing nicer clothes. It is, and I don't say this lightly, one of the most durable engine and transmission combinations ever put in a passenger vehicle. The old Lexus techs will tell you these things don't come in broken, they come in for fluids and go home. And yet you'll find them. One owner, dealer serviced, at 150 or 180,000 miles, priced around 10 to 14 grand because the average buyer sees 6 digits on the odometer and physically recoils. Now here's the part that should make you a little angry. That mileage fear didn't grow naturally. It's cultivated. An industry that profits from selling you newer financed metal has spent decades teaching you that 150,000 miles means used up. When on a machine like this, it means barely broken in, especially when those were gentle highway miles behind a careful owner, which, on an RX, they almost always were. What actually wears on these at that mileage is honest, boring stuff. Control arm bushings that make it feel a little vague, maybe a water pump, maybe struts, a few hundred here and there at any independent shop. Nothing exotic, nothing sealed, nothing dealer only. The engineering says this vehicle has another 150,000 in it. Now let's talk about why all 9 of these bargains exist in the first place, because this is the part that actually matters, and it's not an accident. Ask yourself who benefits from you being afraid of everything on this list. There's no money in telling you that a forgotten Toyota wagon has the same engine as a Lexus. There's no money in telling you a 150,000-mile RX has another decade in it. There is a great deal of money in the opposite. The dealer makes more moving you into the popular model because the popular model carries the fat margin and moves fast, so that's what gets pushed. The manufacturers spend billions a year in advertising to keep 3 or 4 nameplates glowing in your head, and that glow is exactly what you're paying for when you pay the badge tax. The commercial is baked into the price. The lenders would rather write a $38,000 loan on a hot model than watch you pay 11 grand cash for a Venza, because the loan is the product, the car is just the bait, and nobody, anywhere in that whole chain, earns a nickel by teaching you to read a maintenance history or to know which model years got the good transmission or to understand that a badge is a sticker and an engine is a fact. That knowledge used to get passed down from the old mechanics, from fathers and uncles who'd been burned once and learned. It's not being passed down much anymore, and not because of some conspiracy in a smoky room. It's quieter than that. It's just that every party in the transaction does a little better when you know a little less, so the system drifts year after year toward you knowing less. The 9 vehicles on this list are what that drift looks like from the other side. Every one of them is mispriced because of something somebody remembers, or something somebody was taught to fear, and the money flows to whoever set the memory and sold the fear. Here's what I keep coming back to. Standing in the middle of all this, a machine doesn't know what badge it's wearing. The connecting rods in that Kia V6 don't know people snickered at the brand in 1997. The crankshaft in that high-mileage Lexus doesn't know the odometer scares people. Metal is honest. It does exactly what it was engineered to do, for exactly as long as it was built to do it, and it doesn't care about the story we tell around it. We're the ones who muddy it up with memory and fashion and fear. And I think there's something quietly valuable about learning to see machines the way they actually are, because it's a skill that transfers. The person who can look at a forgotten wagon and see a Camry underneath is the same person who's hard to fool everywhere else. Judgment like that used to be common. It's worth keeping alive, one buyer at a time. So here's what I want you to do with all this. First, write the list down or screenshot it, whatever works. The original Toyota Venza with the V6, the Ford Flex, plain 3.5, with the water pump done or budgeted, the Kia Sorento, V6 only, never the 4, the Nissan Murano with fluid records and honest expectations, the Buick Envision, 2.5, the lower the miles the better, and the miles will be low, the Dodge Durango with the Pentastar, the Mazda CX-9, 2018 or newer, the Acura MDX, 2014 or 2015 only, and the high-mileage Lexus RX 350 everybody else is afraid of. Second, whatever you chase, spend $100 to $150 on a pre-purchase inspection at an independent shop, not the seller's buddy. On a $10,000 vehicle that's 1% of the price to avoid 100% of the mistakes, and it's the single best money you'll spend in the whole process. Third, buy the maintenance history before you buy the vehicle. Records beat mileage every time. Do those 3 things, and here's the picture. 6 months from now, you're driving something with the same bones as the popular stuff. You paid $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 less for it, and every time you pass a dealer lot with the crowd lined up around the same 3 models, you'll feel that little private satisfaction of a person who did the math while everybody else did the remembering. That feeling doesn't wear off either. I can tell you that from experience. Tell me in the comments below, what's the most underrated vehicle you've ever owned? The one everybody warned you about? The one with the wrong badge or the weird shape or too many miles? That turned out to be the best thing you ever put in your driveway. Tell me what it was, how far it went, and where you're writing from, because this changes region to region, and some of you have seen things with your own hands that never make it into any ranking. I read every single one of these, and I mean that. The comment section on this channel is half the reason I keep making these videos. There's 100 lifetimes of garage experience down there. And if this kind of straight talk is useful to you, subscribe, because next time we're flipping this whole video on its head. The used engines you should never buy at any price, including one wearing a badge that's on today's list from a model year that turns the same company's best engine into its worst. If you're shopping used right now, you'll want that one before you sign anything. Until then, remember, the badge is a sticker, the engine is a fact, and I'll see you in the next one.
almost on the same level, dapat nandyan yung education mo dahil meron kang pagkakataon at merong tutulong sa'yo. Ha?